Moonlight covers the crumbling porch of a once grand plantation in Natchez, Mississippi. The cicadas fall silent as if they sense something watching from the second-story window. A soft rustle of silk, a dress perhaps. A chandelier sways gently overhead, though there is no wind. Cut to, deep in the Atchafalaya swamp in Louisiana, a lantern glows dimly between moss-covered cypress trees. A voice whispers in French Creole, unintelligible, urgent. The water ripples, something just beneath the surface. Two cultures, two women, two curses, but only one will follow him into his dreams. To understand the haunting, we first need to understand the myth. The Southern Belle wasn't just a woman, she was an icon. In the antebellum South, particularly in places like Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi, Belle was created to be porcelain perfection, graceful, delicate, devastatingly beautiful, and always cloaked in charm. She symbolized wealth, etiquette, and a social order built, tragically, on slavery and patriarchy. These women lived in Greek revival mansions with grand staircases and imposing white columns, where the scent of jasmine mingled with tobacco smoke and magnolia petals clung to the windowsills. But behind the fans and flirtations, many of these women led lives of confinement, heartbreak, and silence. Dr. Ellie Hartwell, a fictional but very credible historian at the University of Charleston, offers this observation in her book, Lace and Mourning: The Women Who Died Waiting. The Southern Belle learned to smile through her sadness, to master the art of invisible suffering. Perhaps that is why so many never left home, even after death. In these homes, generations of daughters were married, widowed, or left to die from tuberculosis, heartbreak, or war. Many were buried on family land, some without proper rites. And that's where locals say the hauntings begin. Now travel 200 miles southwest. The air thickens and the culture deepens. In the heart of Acadiana, Lafayette, Breaux Bridge, New Iberia, the Cajun people carved a world out of exile and resilience. Descendants of French Acadians expelled from Canada in the 18th century, they brought with them Catholic mysticism, oral legends, and a bond with the land that was both sacred and dangerous. Here, ghosts aren't romantic, they're warnings. Swamp spirits are whispered about in gumbo pots and Zydeco dance halls. Stories are told in dialect, a mix of French, English, and something older. Consider the story of La Flamme Verte, the green flame, which supposedly appears just above the waterline at night. If you follow it, you'll disappear, without a trace. Some say it's the soul of a young healer who drowned after being accused of witchcraft in 1827. We don't tell ghost stories, says fictional Cajun folklorist Thérèse Boudreau. We tell survival stories. If you see the ghost, it's too late. And so, unlike the haunted halls of Southern Belles, Cajun ghosts live in the wild, in places where GPS fails and compasses spin. Here's the crux. Southern Belle hauntings seduce you. Cajun stories warn you. In Savannah, Georgia, the ghost of Isabella Duvernay is said to dance eternally in her ballroom, waiting for a groom killed in a duel. Guests at the restored Duvernay estate report cold spots and music from a gramophone that has never been played. Some say she appears in mirrors, brushing her hair. Meanwhile, in the marshes near Lake Charles, there's the story of Tante Mireille, a midwife who cursed an entire lineage after her child was stolen. Her ghost doesn't appear. She screams. Hunters report waking up with bite marks and black mud on their feet, miles from camp. Testimonial 1. Julianne Cross, owner of Natchez Bed and Breakfast. I never believed it until I heard the damn chandelier shatter at 2 a.m. But it didn't fall. It swayed, like someone was dancing underneath it. My dog growled at nothing. The next morning, I found footprints, bare, delicate, size 12, leading into the garden. Testimony 2. Etienne Godet, crayfish fisherman in the parish of St. Martin. I saw green fire on the water. It wasn't a light, it was fire. It moved as if it had a mind. Grandma said if I see it again, I won't come back. I listened to her. I moved inland. These stories did not stay local. The Southern Belle ghost archetype appears in American Horror Story, Coven, with the spectral Delphine LaLaurie, echoing the elegance and horror of plantation ghosts. Meanwhile, Cajun hauntings inspired episodes of True Detective Season 1, especially the enigmatic spiral symbols and swamp rituals. Until Disney's The Princess and the Frog flirts with the mysticism of the bayou, The shadow magic of Dr. TikTok trends also reflect a rise in the Southern Gothic aesthetic. Corseted girls recreating ghostly dances, while Cajun ghost hunting videos rack up millions of views, with viewers swearing they hear French in the static. Two cultures, two haunting languages, one permeated with lace and tragedy, the other primitive, earthy, and unforgiving. And this is just the beginning. What do you think so far? Are you more drawn to the haunted halls of the Southern Belle ghosts, or the wild, unrelenting fear of the Cajun spirits? Let us know in the comments. And if this story has already hooked you, you'll want to subscribe, not because we asked, but because this rabbit hole just keeps getting deeper. And trust me, the next chapter is darker. The heat clung to the skin like a curse. In Natchez, days faded into nights with a golden hue that seemed ancient, as if time itself had slowed in reverence to something buried just beneath the surface. The Duvernay estate loomed at the edge of an oak grove, its shutters weathered, its bones creaking with the memories of a lineage steeped in silence. It was there that the legend of Isadora Duvernay first took shape, not through diaries or letters, but through sightings, through goosebumps on the back of the neck, through unexplained cries heard in the rose garden long after midnight. Visitors spoke of her perfume, gardenia and myrrh, wafting through the locked hallways. Restoration workers refused to stay after dark, citing whispers in the attic and cold patches that took their breath away. But what truly disturbed them was the mirror in the living room. No matter how many times it was replaced, a faint outline of a woman remained etched into the glass, her hand outstretched, her face contorted not in horror, but in sadness. Meanwhile, in the misty veins of southern Louisiana, a different presence stirred. The swamps breathe in ways cities cannot. They pulse, alive with insects, frogs, and nameless things. Locals fear the swamp not for its wildness, but for its memory. The bayous, they say, remember every scream, every betrayal, every sacred vow broken beneath its canopy. In St. Landry Parish, the story of Celestine Thibodeau is still told in hushed tones, never too close to the water. She was known as a traiteur, a healer, and a midwife, and perhaps something more. Stories differ. Some say she was a saint, others a witch, but all agree that she disappeared one October night during the flood of 1856. Her house was found floating, her tools intact, her candles still burning. No trace of her body has ever been discovered. But when certain stars align and the mist dances low over the water, her voice returns, singing in a dialect no longer spoken, her silhouette wading through impossibly shallow water. Both women, Isadora and Celestine, are more than spirits. They are echoes of systems that crushed, silenced, and ultimately erased them. Their reemergence is not random. The Southern Belle haunts because she was never allowed to live fully. The Cajun medicine woman returns because her wisdom was feared, her power buried beneath Christian hymns and fiery sermons. Southern architecture holds its pain. The high ceilings of antebellum mansions didn't just serve to warm, they served to keep secrets. Whispering galleries carried rumors as swift as footsteps. Families measured their legacy not by joy but by control. Each daughter knew which room she would die in. In contrast, the bayous rejected containment. Cajun homes were built on stilts, open to the flood, the wind, and the voice of the swamp. There, the ghosts didn't rattle chains. They sang through the reeds, warped time, and whispered omens to children who dared to go too deep. In Baton Rouge, there is an archive, unofficial, whispered about among folklore studies graduate students, a collection of diaries belonging to a Confederate nurse named Maeve Langston. Her records are peculiar. Amidst records of amputations and fevers, she writes about the Silver Lady, a figure who appeared at the foot of soldiers' beds, sometimes days before their deaths. Maeve believed it was Isadora Duvernay, who supposedly visited wounded officers out of compassion, or perhaps compulsion. Her visits were not malevolent, but rather melancholic. She touched no one. She said no word. She simply stood there, wrapped in silver silk, her eyes like storm glass. No official military records confirm this, but the diary, faded and brittle, tells a consistent story. Oddly, several of the soldiers who claim to have seen her survived. Others have described feeling inexplicably calm, even joyful, as they drift into unconsciousness. This has led some researchers to speculate that the haunting is not a punishment, but a form of companionship, a reluctant psychopomp, meant to soothe the dying because no one has ever soothed them. Compare this to the story collected by Father Antoine Broussard in 1912, deep in the heart of the Atchafalaya Basin. He recorded the confession of a man named Baptiste Leclerc, a hunter who claimed to have struck Celestine Thibodeau in the face in anger, accusing her of cursing his daughter with a fever. According to her confession, she didn't scream. She simply walked into the swamp, chanting in a language he couldn't understand. That night, the fever broke. His daughter survived. But Baptiste claimed he never slept again. Night after night, a woman would appear at the foot of his bed, water dripping from her dress, eyes luminous. She didn't move. She didn't blink. She simply watched. And when she finally spoke, on the seventh night, she whispered her own name in a voice identical to his daughter's. Then she disappeared, leaving a puddle of brackish water on the wooden floor. No one believed him. But the floorboards near that bed still warp, no matter how many times they are replaced. These stories persist because they satisfy a hunger we rarely acknowledge. The hunger to believe that suffering is remembered, that injustice leaves fingerprints, that women like Isadora and Celestine did not disappear without consequence. In the modern era, their stories have mutated. Paranormal podcasts dissect their timelines. YouTube channels claim drone footage of spectral movements near the Duvernay estate, while TikTok filters mimic the mirror reflection glitch supposedly linked to Isadora's presence. A viral trend involves walking through old southern homes at dusk, whispering the words, "Miss Belle, may I dance?" and filming what happens next. Others seek out Cajun swamps during blood moons, leaving offerings of sugar, salt, and herbs in glass jars, believing Celestine can bless them, or at least spare them. What few realize is how much of their power resides in the forgotten. In the Duvernay archives, now digitized at Tulane, there is a receipt for an imported perfume, ordered monthly by Isadora's sister, even 20 years after her death. In Vermilion Parish, the Thibodeau family still tends a small plot of land known as the Medicine Man's Rest, though no official records record a grave there. And in both places, local children are warned. Do not speak ill of the past. Do not mock the women in white or the shadows in the reeds. Some taboos are not superstition. They are survival. The deeper question remains, why now? Why do these stories shine more brightly in an age dominated by technology and disbelief? Perhaps because we are more disconnected than ever from the land, from our ancestors, from ritual. In a world that mocks the unseen fights back even more powerfully. Hauntings of the Southern Belle remind us of beauty transformed into control, of charm that hides pain. Cajun spirits remind us of punished savagery, of wisdom disguised as madness. And both demand that we look back, not for nostalgia, but for reckoning. Isadora's story recently inspired a controversial art installation in New Orleans, The Mirror Bride, where visitors walk through a replica of her bedroom surrounded by distorted reflections that move independently of their bodies. At the exhibition's closing, visitors are invited to write a letter to someone they lost and burn it. More than half report vivid dreams of a woman watching them sleep for weeks. Whether real or imagined, the psychological impact is undeniable. Celestine's legend gave rise to a community health initiative in Lafayette, Les Mains de l'Ombre, which offers herbal workshops and doula services inspired by folk healing. Its symbol? A handprint in green ink, fingers spread as a warning or a blessing. For some, the past offers not fear, but restoration. Still, not all interactions are welcome. In a 2023 recording posted anonymously on a paranormal subreddit, a man walking alone near Catahoula Lake recites what he believes to be a harmless Cajun chant, captured from an old VHS tape. Within minutes, he begins coughing violently, the audio distorted. A faint whisper emerges, barely audible, but echoed by thousands of viewers. "You called, now stay." The video ends abruptly. Attempts to track down the poster have failed. Some claim it was a hoax. Others believe he never left the swamp. And so the divide deepens. Southern Belle hauntings feed on silence, on rooms that are too perfect, smiles that are too forced. Cajun spirits feed on noise, chaos, the connection between the living and the dead. Each side of the Southern supernatural tells us something about ourselves. One warns of what happens when pain is sprayed and perfumed, the other of what happens when pain is buried and denied. They are not entertainment. They are echoes. As the sun sets once more over Natchez, casting long shadows across the columns of a decaying porch, and the fog spreads in thick layers over the Atchafalaya, one must ask, which voice would you rather hear in the dark? The soft rustle of silk and the creak of a ballroom door, or the bubbling song of something rising from below, dank and ancient? The choice isn't a matter of belief, it's a matter of preparation, because whether you accept them or not, they're already here. In rural Louisiana, where water replaces roads and cypress trees cast shadows over everything that moves, a group of anthropologists disappeared in 2011 while investigating linguistic patterns in folk songs. The last recording, made on a boat floating off Henderson, records a monotonous chant in Old French, followed by the sounds of bubbling water and what appears to be muffled laughter. The audio ends abruptly with a cry in English. "She's behind you." The case remains open, but the vessel was found 3 days later, empty, with circular marks burned into the wood of the bow, as if hands had been pressed there with supernatural force. The files were removed from the university database, but clandestine copies circulate on private forums, with users claiming strange auditory experiences after listening to the recording. Some report nosebleeds. Others report recurring dreams of eyes floating alone in swamps. Meanwhile, southern Mississippi is facing a resurgence of reports in Wilkinson County, where young tourists have been breaking into abandoned mansions in search of paranormal records. In one such illegal expedition, 3 history students from the University of Alabama claimed to have spent a night at the Lillian Vauquelin estate, a Victorian residence preserved only by the vegetation that envelops it like a suffocating veil. Inside, they filmed a room with walls covered in old letters, supposedly written by a debutante named Arabella Vauquelin. The letters speak of a faceless man who visited her every night after the harvest ball. The video, uploaded to an anonymous account, shows words being written alone on a fogged-up window pane. "Stay with me, Bella." The phenomenon occurs twice. The handwriting resembles original drafts found in a Baton Rouge library, which belonged to a woman who disappeared in 1891. Since then, the house has been surrounded by state police tape. No one has claimed responsibility for the investigation. The tension between memorial and nightmare reaches its peak when residents themselves begin to treat ghosts as an everyday presence. In Opelousas, a traditional family restaurant claims to keep a table permanently set in the back room, never used by customers. According to the owner, it's for the old-timers. Since beginning this ritual, the paranormal events have ceased. Pots stopped falling, dishes no longer exploded in the air, and the sound of footsteps in the wee hours of the morning has disappeared. In an unofficial interview, one of the waiters claimed to have seen a woman sitting at the table, wearing something between a wedding dress and a nightgown, with long dark hair, damp skin, and absent eyes. She didn't move her lips, but he heard her say, "You remind me of him." Since then, the young man has quit his job and left town. On the Texas side of the supernatural spectrum, the visual cult of Southern Belles is evolving into an aesthetic that fascinates influencers and photographers. Period dresses are sold by small brands that swear their fabric is charged with historical energy. The term became popular after an incident in Austin, where a model became ill during a photo shoot wearing one of these dresses. She passed out for 7 minutes. When she woke up, she spoke with a Southern accent and cited historically accurate Civil War dates. The video went viral but was removed from social media after complaints from her family. The model has since refused to give interviews. Behind-the-scenes footage reveals that the location was used as a field hospital in 1863. Unofficial research indicates that at least 5 nurses died there during a typhoid outbreak. A manuscript found under the wooden floor mentioned a patient named Isabel, who never left the women's ward even after her death. The symbolism of these ghosts operates distinctly, almost as if they followed their own liturgies. The Belle spirits manifest visually with great theatricality, flowing dresses, piano music, perfume in the air. They are like living memories that demand reverence. The Cajun specters, on the other hand, operate through sound and touch, whispers in the ear, chills that run from the heels to the nape of the neck, sudden thermal sensations. They don't want to be seen, they want to be felt. Their appearances cause mental confusion, loss of time, and memory gaps. One account in particular, from a paramedic responding to a call on a rice farm near Abbeville, describes a woman sitting motionless on the porch floor, her eyes glazed over. The patient said, "I went to the other side. She's waiting. She's she's hungry. The woman had no medical history of any disorders. The only detail that caught my attention was the presence of dried mud on her wrists, as if she had been dragged. What we see is a conflict of manifestations, but also of spiritual languages. One linked to the social trauma of the bankrupt aristocracy, of beauty maintained by force, of oppression suffocated in closed quarters. The other linked to nature, to colonial persecution, to survival amidst abandonment. Both resist historical erasure. What's curious is how their legends, once regional, now gain global reach. Dark tourism groups offer packages that include visits to so-called haunted plantations, complete with themed dinners and period costumes. However, independent guides, more connected to local communities, warn of the dangers of this exoticization. A guide from Lafayette states that certain places don't want to be visited. They sense when the visitor is curious, not reverent. She herself suspended tours after a French tourist disappeared in 2018. He was last seen walking alone on a trail near Bayou Teche, filming for his channel. The phone was found 3 days later, with only one file saved. A 12-second video showing a woman in white crossing the swamp, walking on water. Her face was unclear, but her eyes looked like two blinking black holes. Local spirituality has always been one of resistance. In Cajun syncretism, the Catholic faith coexists with faith healers, indigenous legends, and Afro-Caribbean elements. In the legacy of the Southern Bells, Baptist and Methodist churches acted as filters of denial. Female spirits were not accepted in the dogma, and perhaps for this reason, they rebelled in such powerful visual forms. Each mansion has its lady in the mirror, its bride on the stairs, its angel in the blue room. They all share elements: interrupted youth, white clothes, nameless sadness. Some seem to relive the day of their death, as if in an eternal loop. Others look into the eyes of the living, as if asking for help to cross over, but no one knows how, or if they should. This abyss of interpretation is what keeps the legends pulsing. There is something inconsolable about the spirits of the South. They don't threaten, they remember. Their appearances are like cracks in time, reminding us that history never truly passes, and most unsettling, that what was unsaid, unrecorded, or respected finds another way to exist. A form that dances between silken veils and green mists, that appears amid sighs and forgotten songs, that whispers, "I am still here." Shadows in the American South don't follow the laws of physics. Some nights, they seem to project themselves against the moon instead of receding from it. On others, they slide along the interior walls of forgotten houses, as if searching for something, or someone, that never arrived. And it is within these distortions of reality that legends persist, not just as whispers of the past, but as active forms that shape the present, including how we consume culture, dress, decorate our homes, and explain the inexplicable. What was once confined to candlelit dinners and stories told on the porch now expands to movie screens, Halloween costumes, horror film soundtracks, and the imaginations of millions who may never have set foot in Louisiana or Mississippi, but who have been touched by these presences unknowingly. In the series True Blood, set in the heart of Louisiana, there's a supporting character named Mary Beth, a woman who appears briefly in the background of scenes in the local cemetery, always dressed in off-white tones, with wet hair and bare feet. She never speaks, but each season she moves a little closer to the camera. The script never mentions her. The producers, when questioned, say it's a tribute to a regional cultural figure. However, eagle-eyed fans have compared images of Mary Beth with digitally reconstructed portraits of Celestine Thibodeau, suggesting the character is an evocation of the legend herself. The resemblance is uncanny. On streaming platforms, the Southern Gothic aesthetic has become dominant in series like The Haunting of Hill House, which, despite being set in the American East, borrows all the elements of the Belle legend: long-haired female ghosts, period dresses, and tragedies silenced by social conventions. The hallways of the Crane Mansion could be the same as those at the Duvernay plantation. The woman with the bent neck who haunts the protagonist directly recalls the young Arabella Vauquelin, who was allegedly accidentally hanged during a masquerade ball. When the character comes to terms with her traumas, it is this figure's vision that guides her. Interestingly, the writers have never confirmed the direct inspiration, but two Southern folklore researchers were consulted during production. Coincidence? In the music world, the influence is even more evident. American singer Florence Welch, of the group Florence Plus the Machine, has stated in interviews that the song Seven Devils was composed after a creative retreat in New Orleans, where she stayed in a historic French Quarter mansion. She described feelings of being watched and hearing laughter coming from upstairs while writing. The song evokes images of judgment, loss, and resurrection, exactly like the cycles Southern belles seem to experience even after death. In the music video, Florence dances alone in a dark room, surrounded by shadows resembling veils. In one specific scene, the mirror behind her reflects a figure not present in the frontal image. The director has not commented on the effect. Fans claim there is no CGI in that scene. In independent cinema, directors have been exploring Cajun mythology more openly. The feature film Marsh Blood, released in theaters in 2022, follows a mixed-race woman who inherits a cabin on the banks of a bayou and discovers that her grandmother was a conjurer who made a pact to protect the family's female line. The film was not widely released, but it has amassed a fervent cult following online. Users report experiences of déjà vu during the screening and claim to have heard a second whispered soundtrack not listed in the credits. At the end of the film, the main character enters the swamp with a candle and recites a chant in Old French that matches almost word for word the recordings collected by Thérèse Boudreau in her interviews with Cajun elders in the 1980s. The origin of the script remains a mystery. Beyond the screen, the presence of these legends extends to fashion, architecture, and even interior design. The ghostcore movement, popular among young people on TikTok and Pinterest, combines visual elements such as tulle veils, antique cameos, sepia tones, and dim lighting, creating an atmosphere of stylized mourning. Many videos include explicit references to unsent love letters, cracked portraits, and covered mirrors. Profiles with millions of followers share supposed spells inspired by Celestine's practices. Baths with herbs gathered at midnight, prayers in French, candles lit in windows during storms. This isn't just about fashion. It's a symbolic return to the sacred and the hidden. It's as if the most digitally connected generation in history is desperately searching for a way to reconnect with the invisible. Even in tourism, the influence is palpable. Travel itineraries offer nights in haunted houses with personalized logbooks, silent dinners in ancient halls, and psychographed letter sessions led by mediums trained in historical narrative. In some of these events, participants are invited to write letters as if they were figures from the past, and reportedly, some of these letters seem to be answered. Letters written by figures who never existed, receiving responses in different handwriting than the original, on paper that appears folded the following morning. There are reaction videos. There is silence in the eyes of people who have experienced this, a kind of truth that requires no confirmation. And you, who have followed this story thus far, have you ever stopped to think about why these tales resonate so deeply in our imagination? Why does the image of a woman in white in an empty hallway, or the sound of someone calling your name in the dark, affect us more than any monster? Perhaps because these legends carry more than fright. They carry memories. They are the voices that couldn't speak in life, now finding ways to whisper in our ears while we sleep. If you're enjoying this journey, now's the time to join us. Not out of obligation, but because stories like these shouldn't be forgotten. Every legend we tell here is a flame that refuses to go out, and we still have so much to explore. The ghosts of the South are just beginning to speak.
Mas manter falsas